Welcome into the Backroads Bill Podcast. I'm Ben, and this week we're talking about Alive Outdoors, which is celebrating its 25th year in business this year as we head kind of to the end of 2025. But it is an experiential outdoor education business and program. They offer a whole bunch of different programs to across and mostly focusing on the schools and the different kids that are around to give them this outdoor experience. It was a really cool chat that we had with today's guest and talking about how she built this program up from scratch to create what it is today. And they don't just do stuff here in Ontario or in Canada. They have gone past that. They've done stuff in different places around the world. We talk about a whole bunch of different really cool experiences that happened away from Canada that took these students on different trips and some really neat stories that came across from that. Why outdoor education and experiential outdoor education is so important, and also really why it continues to be something that people need to get into their curriculum. They need to get kids away from screens into the outdoors. And we talk about some of the challenges that are faced around, today's youth and their use of technology. But all of that is on the way. But first, we do need to thank today's title sponsor, the North Bay Regional Health Center Foundation.
We often talk about the rhythm of life in North Bay. For Amanda, that rhythm was fast. Hockey practices, baseball games, juggling a full-time career, and keeping up with two energetic boys. But life hit pause after routine surgery led to a call she never expected. Stage 2 breast cancer. No symptoms, no warning. Suddenly, Amanda was facing a double mastectomy, reconstruction, weeks of chemotherapy and radiation treatments, and several additional surgeries. The path ahead was overwhelming. Through every stage, one question stayed with her. How do I keep being mom for my boys? Amanda's care team at the North Bay Regional Health Center made all the difference. They understood how deeply she wanted to hold on to familiar routines, cheering from the stands, being there at bedtime, staying present in the moments that gave her strength. Their compassion kept her connected to the two people who kept her fighting. She stayed present. She stayed grounded. She stayed mom. This holiday season, help ensure patients have access to the exceptional care they need during life's most challenging moments. Your gift helps patients like Amanda stay connected to the people they love while strengthening healthcare for families across our region. Visit nbrhcfoundation.ca or call 705-495-8125 to give.
So today we have a really cool guest in the studio, not in the studio, we're talking remotely to them. We don't have a lot of in-studio guests, but today we have Jalynn Bosley from Alive Outdoors. She is the executive director and founder of Alive Outdoors. It's been going on since 2000, so you're celebrating your 25th year this year. First of all, welcome into the podcast.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Well, you know, Ben, Jel is kind of a mainstay. I don't want to say the word pioneer, but Alive Outdoors has been around for a quarter of a century. She's been around for a lot longer in outdoor experiential education. That's what we're going to talk about today, Jel. How did your journey start? Take us back to those camping days, because I just learned offline that your name is named after a camp counselor.
Yes, I'm named after my mom's camp counselor from Tanamakun. Jalynn Bennett was her name. And, I never met her, but I understand she was an outstanding woman. And my mom really looked up to her. So I carry the name proudly.
And where did you go? For all of us, those seeds are planted when we were outside playing, or we went to camp and so on, went on canoe trips. Tell us a little more about how you evolved into the industry, so to speak.
Yeah, my journey into outdoor education was really based on a childhood spent outside, really. And I was fortunate to I grew up going to YMCA Camp Pinecrest, and they had, as I got older, I was young when I started, I was 6, but as I sort of moved through the ranks there, I ended up as a teenager going on some big long canoe trips. And they were really the maker of me, right? Time outside, crossing portages, working with people that, you may or may not know at the beginning, things, carrying only what you need. It really was exceptional learning for myself. And really it was, I definitely know that if I didn't go to Pinecrest, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing right now.
Yeah, really. I like that maker of me, and my journey is a little different, but certainly the same thing. The great outdoors and nature is the maker of me and the Canadian Ecology Center. And, not many people get to live their dream, and I can say that proudly. And tell us how you kind of got to the live outdoor stage, 25 years or thereabouts. In other words, the formation of the company.
Yeah, Bill, it was interesting. I was a classroom teacher for the TDSB, and I was teaching phys ed. And I just, sometimes when you just know when you're not in the right place. And I thought I'd be a teacher for my whole life. And of course, I have been. I just had a very narrow lens of what a teacher was at that young time in my life. But what I realized was, it's like going down a stream and you feel like the current is pushing you in another direction. And for me, I didn't know where it was pushing me, but I knew that it was pushing me out of the confines of the gym. And so really it was sort of like, what should I do with myself? What should my life path be? I thought this was what I was going to do long term, and it's obviously not. And I took that nudge and that quiet leap of faith. I went on a trek in Nepal, and I took a leave, and then I came back and I taught for another 6 months, and then I formally resigned at 27. So with really no plan, just an understanding that something would reveal itself, or I would work towards that next step. But I realized, for me, the outdoors on that trek is not just a place, it's a mirror, right? It's a catalyst. It's an invitation to meet yourself. And that was sort of my life journey. And so I realized that's what I want to do. That's how I want to spend my life with, for young people. And so starting Alive was sort of like a real step towards authenticity for me, and sort of finding that leap of faith, that courage to take that leap of faith to start something. And I had no business background whatsoever, like totally. This has all been trial and error and heart and intuition, and it's been quite the journey.
Yeah, it certainly has. I was hearkening back. Maybe it was like that early Brad Pitt movie, 7 Days in Tibet, and you had a realization en route. I again, similarly to me, I always say affectionately, I was in the factory as well. I called the schools factories, and I knew I had to get out of the factory, and how I was going to make that bridge into, outdoor experiential education and try to survive, because not many of us, when you Google outdoor experiential education companies in Canada, or the world for that matter, you come across Outward Bound, which was started in 1969, and their model is different than yours, and we'll get to explaining how a live outdoor work. But again, to make that transition and stay at it and run a business and employ people, be profitable, et cetera, that's a feat in itself on the long term, because not many people get to stay in the field. And I know from my experience, for programmers been at the Canadian Ecology Center, what happens to them? They end up, if they're not teachers, I bet you we've graduated like 35 or 40 teachers have went to faculties, and then they end up back in the schools, and then they think they're going to have an outdoor experiential ed background. But the opportunities are few and far between in the public education system. And Jel, tell us, and that's maybe a segue to tell us what Alive Outdoors does. And I'm also intrigued with the name as well, because, one thing I know from talking to you is that and this is, I think, a direct quote from you, how well we know and understand ourselves is what determines the quality of our lives. And I know you spend a lot of time talking about that, and I think that's the cornerstone of Alive Outdoors philosophy.
Oh, it definitely is. Alive is rooted in personal leadership and really the belief that, once you understand the contours of who you are and your own inner landscape, you can then step into a more purposeful path for yourself, a more authentic path for yourself. And yeah, Alive, it stands for adventure, leadership, individuality, values, and empowerment. And really, when I came up with the name, it was later where I thought, oh, what could this stand for? And then I added on the outdoors at the end, because I thought, are people going to know it's an outdoor company? But the truth is like, really, it's just understanding that it's hard to live an authentic life, but it's way easier to do that when you're very clear on your values and you have your feet on the ground and you understand how to steady yourself. And so for me, the belief that the more you understand yourself, that is sort of like what propels me forward, is helping these young people understand and learn about their inner landscape, and coming from a strength-based perspective. So Alive is rooted in positive psychology and coming from like helping young people figure out like, what are your strengths and how can you use them to be your best self, take care of the planet, take care of your peers, and show up in the world in a way that is not only fulfilling for yourself, but also has an impact. So that's really what Alive is. It's rooted in understanding yourself.
Yeah, you do a lot of international trips and domestic as well. Give us an example of an international trip, because there's been some recent ones that are on the website, and things you do in Canada and Ontario.
Well, I mean, Alive really has only recently gotten into the international trips. It's quite fresh and new. Our first trip was to Bhutan in 2017. All the other years, our programs have been happening on a canoe trip or happening based out of camps, and they've been focused on helping schools build community and connection, resilience, compassion, all those things. But the international stuff is quite new, and Bhutan was our first destination. Really, it was a dream destination for myself. As I said, when I was sort of figuring out what to do with my life, I went on a trek in Nepal. Everyone I met kept mentioning Bhutan. And I looked at it in my 20s and I thought, oh, it's expensive. I'm never going to get there. And then as Alive has evolved into an emphasis on self, the landscape in Bhutan has just became more and more appealing to me. Like, it's the country that focuses on gross national happiness, and they really take care of their people. They're coming from a community-minded lens, a Buddhist country. It's a small country that's focused on sustainability. 70% of the forest is protected from a constitutional perspective. And so that ended up being our first destination. And we've gone back, I think we've been 5 or 6 times now. We've taken over 180 people there. And it remains a place that is near and dear to my heart. It was in my dreams. And in reality, it was just even better than I could have ever dreamed of. And so that's what started the international trips. And then the schools started to ask for other destinations. And so it's only in the last couple of years where we've worked with schools to figure out what is it that they're trying to accomplish, and united with them to figure out how can we help support those journeys. So we just had a trip this summer go to Morocco. We had another marine biology trip go out this fall to Grand Bahama. And, there's some trips coming up to Costa Rica and Belize. And it's not just destinations that we've chosen, it's destinations that the schools are choosing and wanting to weave their curriculum in. And it's a very collaborative approach, as is every program with Alive.
Yeah, just imagine, Ben, gross national happiness. I mean, imagine if we could just take that pixie dust and sprinkle it on the United States and Canada and many other countries, we'd be far better off, wouldn't we? But happiness comes with experiential education outdoors. But I'm going to pass it over to Ben. I know he's got some questions.
What I found fascinating about what you were talking about with the international trips was there's obviously so if you think about something like the difference between college and university is more learning the theory and you understand how something happens, whereas usually in college you're learning how to do something. So the old kind of joke was that a university person could tell you how to do something, but the college person could show you how to do something. And there is so when you're learning about these different, I don't know, whether it's biology or all these other things in the outdoors, to actually go there and to experience that, especially internationally, like going to Morocco, going to these different places, seeing the different biology, the different ecosystems, all that stuff, I think is kind of you're going to learn a lot more, right? So I'm curious from your standpoint, what is the challenge for you to do something here in Ontario/Canada and then going internationally, like what are some of the challenges that you face as a team from an education standpoint, language barriers, and all the things that you kind of have to think about?
Well, of course, the biggest thing is you have to come at it from a risk management lens, and you also have to understand what it is that why go. We're not aiming to create travelers, and I think that that's a really important point. Is like our goal is to create humans who recognize the world as a shared home, and it's our goal is to help young people understand that the world doesn't end at their doorstep. There's so many threads that connect us worldwide, and we need to sometimes see these places and meet these people to step into the world in a wider sense of awareness and understand our sense of responsibility as well. So we have to be sure that we're on the same page for why we're going, what's at the root of wherever it may be that we're traveling. And then obviously it's making sure we have the right relationships in place with the people in the places where we're going. We're not going over with our own agenda to these countries. We're going really from a collaborative partnership lens to make sure that it's united in the reason why we're all coming together. And we're not going and saying, oh, we're going to do this with you. We're asking the people in the countries where we're going, how can we be supportive? What is it that is there to learn here? We have a real lens that you go to learn and just exchange ideas. And, gone are the days where you go over to some of these countries and you go to build something, or you're displacing workers, and then they have to come in and fix what it is the students did. So, the lens on service has changed drastically. The lens on risk management, and Bill will know that because he's done so much work from the risk management lens, is that's a huge challenge. But I think the most important piece, before you get into sort of the logistics of it all, is to make sure that you're partnered with the right people, you're going for the right reasons, and that everybody's on the same page about desired learning outcomes.
Yeah, and can you tell us a couple of your favorite stories, maybe favorite experiences that you've had or students have had, or people you've taken with you have had?
Sure. My stories for myself, the things that really jump out at me are the small, nuanced conversations that I wouldn't have the privilege of having otherwise. And, my own favorite story was I was talking to a boy that was in grade 6 in Bhutan, just having lunch with him. And I was just asking him how long had he been at the school, because we were partnered with the school. And he was saying, I've only been at the school a couple of years. I didn't come to school for many years because I had to stay home as a punishment. I hurt a young person in my past life, was what he said. And in this life, he was explaining to me that he was sick. And I said, okay, well, what did you have? And he said, we don't go to doctors, we go to astrologers. And I said, and what did you have? And he said, I just know that this was my karmic undoing from my past life. And I said, and how do you feel about that? And he said, it's mine to own. And this is a boy that's 10, right? I was so moved by that conversation with him because here we are talking about, something that hadn't even crossed my mind, past lives, karma. Obviously, we're in a Buddhist country at the time. This was in Bhutan. But the striking moment that stuck with me was, here is a boy owning his illness in this lifetime because of something he's done in his past life. And sometimes when I'm dealing with students here and there's been an incident, maybe somebody's been hurt or bullied or a piece of property has been damaged, no one will even own that, right? So we're living in a different landscape, and I feel like sometimes I come back so humbled from these experiences, and I see it on the students as well. The kindness that we experience in some of these countries is unparalleled. And the students will say, had the tables been turned and these students came to our country, I wouldn't be carrying their bag. I wouldn't be sharing my blankets. I wouldn't be giving them, my cutlery. The level of care that we receive in some of these countries is just, we cannot, as from a North American lens, quite understand the difference that we're experiencing. And I think that it's quite often that's the piece that people bring home with them. It's those small conversations, it's those small actions that really become very profound, and they sort of leave a beautiful wake behind them that you can't return the same person as when you went.
It's almost that time of year. Early mornings at the rink, fresh notebooks and backpacks, and a community gearing up for another great season of varsity sports. At Source for Sports North Bay, we're proud to be part of it all. Whether it's finding your kid's first pair of skates, gearing up for tryouts, or outfitting your team for the season ahead, we've got you covered. Because here, we're not just a sports store, we're neighbors, coaches, teammates, and fans. And we're proud to cheer you on every shift, step, and stride of the way. Visit Source for Sports North Bay at 1321 Fisher Street and let us help you along your way.
It struck me too that, and we could talk for a long time about anxiousness in adolescence and the like, and resilience, but I think it's more important to talk about resilience than anxiousness. But how do you do that in Live Outdoors? And because I know you have fulsome programs and you have partnerships, and it's not just take kids here. You're doing team building and the like. But maybe a comment about resilience and how you've seen that over your time as a teacher, and then of course through 25 plus years with the Live Outdoors.
Yeah, you're probably seeing this too, Bill. I mean, the level of resilience really took a massive dip after the pandemic, right? And that has been slowly shifting and changing in a positive direction. But for the first few years there, I was really concerned. Partly because even when our trips started to come back, which was a few years after the pandemic, we weren't obviously going away, or we were just given a real standstill there, as you know. What I was seeing was that parents had felt like their kids had already endured so much discomfort. We all had, obviously. And when you look at the comfort circles and you think about, comfort zone and stretch zone and negative zone, we were all in all of them at once, right? We never knew when this thing was going to end. We were treading water. But it was over and things were coming, contained again. And what happened was the resilience was so low, and the parents were struggling to help them get to that place of pushing themselves again. And I think what's happening now is we're slowly getting to that nudging forward. But for a while there, I have been very concerned about the level of resilience. And, we've had grade 10s and 11s that haven't been able to be on a 3 or 4 night trip because it's been too much. And parents that have been driving up to the camp to pick them up because they don't want them suffering or they don't want them to be uncomfortable. And I get that. I totally get that. But on the other side of the coin, when you go and pick up your child from, a program that's aimed at helping them grow, it's tough because it's basically not allowing that growth to occur. So it's a catch-22, right?
Yeah. And deeper still is the value of getting students outside. You deal a lot with private schools versus public education, only and I know from my vantage point, having been a school board trustee, is that public schools, this whole aspect of risk management, it's better, it's easier for some principals, because the power does exist in the principal, the leader of the school, to say no rather than say yes. But in in your business model, private schools, for whatever, for a number of reasons, I guess, they tend to grasp onto that. But it all goes back to what you said earlier about the whole aspect of risk management. And so how do you approach that from an Live Outdoors perspective?
Well, as you know, Ryan Howard works with us, and he was a professor up at Lakehead, and he is leading the charge on all of the risk management consulting on our end of things. And when Jeremiah Perry drowned for the TDSB with the TDSB canoe trip, that changed the landscape of outdoor education for many people, coming from a fear factor. And we were hired to do the audit with the TDSB, so we were part of that, looking at that trip, and I think it really made a lot of people nervous. And I totally understand why. Um, but on the other side of the coin, you can't always look at risk management from a loss perspective. You have to figure out how can you manage risk so there's gain and so there's growth. And Ryan's working really hard to do that and helping schools develop, strong risk mitigation practices and risk registers, and helping people understand that it's not a document that lives on the shelf. It's a document that, is a living, breathing document that needs to be put into place daily and looked at. But I think, we for a while there, we swung into the risk equals loss lens. And that in itself is so detrimental for young people these days, right? Because when we're not out there doing things, we're just stagnant. And that's where I think that a lot of that suffering comes from, that anxiousness comes from, is that you're not pushing like you normally would as a young person.
You guys are celebrating 25 years. Yeah, it was 2000. It's now 2025. A lot has changed in 25 years, right? Like not just from the way the seasons are and the way the political landscape is, social media, technology, all of these things. How has the landscape of what you guys do with the experiential outdoor education, how has this changed in 25 years for the better and maybe not so much for the better?
Yeah, I mean, Ben, when I started this company, I literally was in the schools with a slide projector. Like,
Yeah, I remember those.
And yeah. And, now we're doing slideshows on the final night of our programs. Like there was no digital cameras. I was literally using film and sending pictures to the schools and saying, hey, here was a great trip. So much has changed. Kids weren't carrying phones, right? We weren't going into that. We didn't have iPhones. We didn't have, I think early days was maybe the BlackBerry, but kids didn't have those. Those were business tools. So a lot has changed. I find that, so our programs are screen-free, and that in itself causes some anxiousness for parents and for kids. So we weren't navigating with some of the emotions that we're navigating now, but obviously all the more reason to get them away from their screens and get them out immersed in nature and understanding that, I understand that's going to be hard. A huge challenge these days is some people still don't see the value of these experiences when it comes to like helping nurture a strong, grounded, whole person. And I think that, that's a tough thing for people to understand that the heart, in my opinion, the heart of outdoor education is the learning to know yourself. But I think it's, I often think of the forest canopy. And I think, some people are looking at this they're looking up from the forest floor and all they see are the leaves, right? They're not seeing the branches supporting one another, or competing or cooperating for light, or the quiet, slow growth that's happening all the time. They're seeing, that we're building fires, or we're teaching kids to put up tents or how to paddle. And some people just don't see, the deeper sense or value of these experiences because they're stuck down in the underbrush of their routines and their screens and their schedules and the monotony of the day-to-day life. So I think a huge challenge is also understanding that discomfort is where growth occurs, and we're still struggling with that. So I think outdoor education helps clear out and carve out some of that underbrush that some people are feeling. And getting kids to step away from their screens, and getting parents to understand, don't send a second cell phone because we're going to take the first one. We need students to have this space to disconnect and to step into sort of a quieter place and just sort of figure out what kind of metaphorical tree do they want to be in the forest, and how are they going to grow, and what do they need to grow, and how can they relate to the forest around them? So we want them to we're trying to build skills that are going to be there for the long haul, way after, the campfire goes out or the tent comes down or the echoes of the day, grow quiet. So there's so many issues that I think outdoor education has a bit of a bad rap sometimes because it's not clear to everybody that it's about so much more. And it's not about escaping school. And some people really feel that way. Some parents feel that way. It's really about expanding it And it's not about outdoor skills, it's about life skills. And when people see that and they really understand that, I think the value becomes undeniable.
Yeah, it's interesting you talk about the phones and everything, because when you're a kid, you just have all of this, and especially now with social media, like everything's online. You're chronically online. You've got these phones, which is a little. I was lucky enough when I was born in '94, so when I grew up, we kind of had the best of both worlds. We had like the no phones, and then by the time I was in grade 10, 11, that's when social media started becoming a thing, and it wasn't as ingrained in the world. But one of the things that I find interesting is, for these kids, it's hard to get them away from that. But then as an adult, now there's so much pressures, like you have adult responsibilities, especially with the way the economy is now and everything, that being able to shut off your phone is probably the best experience. Like, I'm lucky enough to have a cottage, and being able to go there and like not having service it's funny, as you get older, it becomes more of a blessing than a curse that some of the younger people, I think, see it as.
Well, at the Canadian Ecology Centre, in the summer credits, when we have them for 2 weeks, they willingly give up their phones, and we give them tech time for 20 minutes every second or third day. And at the end of that journey for them, they are they think that was a good thing. They look at that cleansing, so to speak, in a very positive way. They know it in their minds and their heart that for all of us that the little box is addictive and is causing all kinds of mental and physical changes in our lives. And so, yeah, to do that, I think, and Jel said it a little earlier, that they do that because, and again, as you said, Jel, the programs that you provide, it's about life skills and expanding beyond the school, and I think that's very, very important. And as we kind of wrap up, I mean, it's this time of the season. This is the first day, and I don't know, Ben, when this is going to be published on all the platforms, but I put a little bling on this morning. I'll put an extra one every day leading up, because it is 2 weeks to Christmas, I think, on this day. So just what are you most grateful for in a kind of in a natural way? I mean, we're all grateful for our family and friends and all that kind of thing, but in a different way, in a natural way, that when when I look at you and see what you've done, and I think there's a person, again, that not many people get to live their dream. And sometimes when you live your dream, it's a lot of work. But yes, what you're grateful for.
Yeah, it's so perfect, Bill, because I don't know if you know this, but we end every Alive Outdoors program with a gratitude circle. And really the goal is to help young people develop that muscle and understand privilege, but also to understand the value of gratitude from a stress management lens and how to move through the world in a grateful way. So, I mean, this could be a whole other podcast of everything that I'm grateful for, but if I had to boil it down to something short, I would say I'm grateful. I'm grateful for my community. And it's a massive undertaking to start a business. It certainly is. Alive has certainly not gotten to the 25-year mark because I've been pushing it forward on my own. Your daughter has been an instructor with Alive, and she's one of hundreds of instructors that have brought their heart and soul to this community. And our full-time team, they're literally incredible people, each and every one of them. And we all believe in the shared common goal of getting young people outside to really connect with themselves, but also to understand the bigger picture of care for the planet and care for each other. And so I'm so blessed with the people that have come on board this journey. And so many people have supported this journey that I feel like, I'm so sincerely grateful that I took this leap of faith early on in my 20s. And my big message to all these young people that I'm working with now in their 20s is use your 20s well, right? Like, allow yourself to play and enjoy yourself, because the work will come. And it is possible to create a path forward that is fulfilling and enriching. And yes, this has been a dream come true in many ways. But I think sometimes, as you well know, owning your own business, it's hard work. And I think a lot of time people don't see that. There's a lot of people behind the scenes at Alive that have made this a success. And I'm just so grateful that I've been able to spend my life this way. It's been a huge blessing.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned daughter Allie Wendy Steer, because she attributes a lot. And she's just finished all her master's coursework and is a certified psychotherapist. She attributes a lot of her journey to you and Alive Outdoors. And so that's a compliment in itself. But, Jel, the compliment is to you. And thank you so much for being on the Backroads Bill podcast today.
Thanks, Bill. Thanks, Ben. Real pleasure to be here and an honor. I wish you guys a fantastic holiday season.
Well, a big thank you to Jal for coming on. It was a really cool chat. I really love the story of her talking to this 10-year-old boy and him really kind of getting heavily into the philosophy a bit. Something you don't expect from a 10-year-old. Something you don't even probably expect from an adult, to be honest, or most adults, as it was a really kind of wow moment for her, and it was a really neat thing to hear about. And again, it just shows why these programs are so important. So thank you again for coming on. And for those listening, I hope you learned something a little new today. So if you're looking for more of the Backroads Bill podcast, you can find new episodes every single Wednesday morning. We're available on most audio platforms, Spotify, Apple, all the major ones. The video version you can find on the North Bay Echo YouTube channel. And of course, you can find this podcast alongside other North Bay-centric podcasts at northbayecho.ca. You can also check out our newsletter, Echo Essentials, which comes to you once a week and really wraps around what's been going on the Echo Community Podcast Network. So we will see you again next week. Thank you so much for listening this week, and we'll see you again for another Backroads adventure.